Who is this?
Hmm.
Why are you wearing the same shirt as me?
We're both wearing Datadog shirts, and one of us actually works for the company. Which one
You
is
work
it?
for Datadog? Yeah. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Not too bad at all. What's new? It's been a couple weeks.
It has been a couple of weeks. I was on vacation
Where
again.
did you vacation? Again, yeah. What's
Yeah,
up
I
with
know.
that?
It seems like I keep going. Just a few weeks ago, I went to Idaho to go rafting.
Right.
This time we had a wedding um, to attend to at St. Anne's Academy in Victoria, which was a
Mm,
lovely little location right downtown. So it was nice. We stayed at the Empress, which is an amazing hotel, especially for if you have kids. Oh my
right.
God, they have like toddler-sized robes, and they have a great pool with a kiddie pool area, warm, and they when at check-in they gave you a little coloring book about the hotel and even a little teddy bear. Oh, it's awesome. Um, and it's even better when you can pay with points like we did, or a credit
Nice.
card. And then we went to Hornby Island.
I've been
So
there. How's
you
that?
have
I have.
why?
I, I, people that I know have a cabin up there on Denman Island, which is I think you have to go
Okay.
to Hornby to get to Denman or something like that.
Yeah,
But
you
yeah,
go to Denman to Hornby.
that's what it is. Yeah. So I've had supper on Hornby Island a few times
Yeah.
actually. Yeah, there's like one bar, restaurant slash bar there. Yeah. You probably went to the same place in case you got any food
Well,
there.
no, we didn't go to Denman. We just went straight to Hornby and never
That's
left.
what I mean though. At Hornby, there's like one place to get stuff to
Oh
eat.
yeah,
It's quite small. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. There's not
That's
even
fantastic.
the only traffic light is the one that lets you know it's time to board the ferry.
That's right.
Yeah. But that was great. That was an amazing trip. It was one of the longest times I've been without opening up this laptop or a work laptop of any kind.
Right. Which is
Um,
probably good because last time I was at Hornby, there wasn't a lot of like cell reception. There was definitely
yeah,
like
no. And the house we stayed at is a friend of ours who's entertainment lawyer, and
okay.
he's got he often goes up there and works from there, so he's got for the area a really decent internet connection. It is a whopping 2 megabit.
I was about to say, is it 1 megabit? Yeah.
Yeah. And if you want to get I think 10 or 15, you go to there's like the one computer center, and they go a really fast connection.
Right.
Get like 5 connections bonded together. Yeah.
There's also like a communal. There's an island kind of Wi-Fi, or at least there was like a communal
Mm,
thing that was like run as well. But I don't know if it's still around.
yeah,
That's
I didn't
amazing.
see anything like that.
Oh,
Uh,
that's so cool.
but yeah, it was great. We didn't really do a whole lot other than we rented a boat one of the last days we were there, and I shared with you that video.
Yeah, I saw that.
We It was just a take us around the island, show us interesting things around the island. We got 3-4 hours. Show us what you want to show us. And so we start off with like a little lighthouse nearby, and then go
Mhm.
to some of the beaches. And then as we're driving on to the next thing, he says, "Oh, I think I saw a whale," and goes off in a different direction, goes across, um, pretty close. I think I don't know how far. We went some ways into the big body of water there, and stopped about probably a good couple hundred yards away from these 2 humpback whales. And the guy was pretty careful about staying back, wanting to get close, but staying back and giving them space. Mostly because he's seen that humpback whales can be kind of unpredictable, and if
Right.
they can easily flip a boat. They could I mean, our boat was probably half the size of them, so they could easily flip us. And so let's stay away, give them some space. And so we kind of like were on, going parallel with them for a while. And then we stopped, and they went under, and we didn't see them for a while. And then all of a sudden, they pop up about 20 feet from us, coming right towards us. And they go under, and then there's like, well, where'd they go? And then you see them kind of upside down right under the boat.
Oh
So
wow.
it was, I feel like it looked like I could have reached into the water and like
R-
rubbed the belly.
Right.
Uh, could have.
It sounds like they were playing with you. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And they kind of went under, and then they kind of disappeared for a minute, and then looped around and did it again, and it was wonderful, exciting, but scary because we knew we might end up in 400-foot deep water right there, so as soon as we had a safe chance to get away, we kind of sped away, because it's generally not great to be that close to whales, and
you don't want to push your luck either.
Yeah, but posted the video on YouTube yesterday, just totally unedited view of it, and
just the raw,
so that was amazing, totally amazing, definitely the highlight, one of the highlights of the trip.
Yeah, no kidding, that looks amazing. I gotta admit, I kind of scrubbed through the video to see it, so I didn't see the whole progression.
There's a lot of dead air. so now on the YouTube video there are chapter markers, so you can just skip ahead to the good parts.
That is smart. Yeah, chapter markers are really cool. A lot of people don't use them on YouTube, unfortunately.
Yeah, and they recently started using some sort of AI to figure out what are probably the good chapter markers, and so even if you don't have any, they will automatically add some where it thinks they should be.
So you just put labels on them, basically?
No, they just figure it out.
No, I mean, like once the chapter markers are there, can you give them like an indicator of what the chapter might be?
I don't know if you can edit the ones that they give you, because the ones that you, if you want to specify them yourselves, you have to go into your description and just put time code description, and it's reading that description and turning those into the chapter markers. But if they automatically add them, they don't add it to the text. So if you want to tweak what they've created, you can't. You just have to create your own.
It seems like a Google solution.
Yeah.
That is pretty cool though, because a lot of the times, even for me, if I've got like raw game streams or whatever, which is kind of what I do on YouTube at least, it's like no commentary, just like raw stuff that I might use later for videos or clips or whatever, just because the PlayStation streams right there. But it is like, I see people watching them and I see they stop around the same point, but I don't realize like why they're watching. So I'll go back and have a look and see if they put chapter markers in. But I've thought about that just to let people like, there's a secret. I found it. It's here. Don't watch this whole hour-and-a-half video because you'll be bored.
Yeah. So are there games that you play right now? What area that you're really into?
I think during COVID, I may have regressed a little bit as an adult back to like a teenager. I've been playing a lot of competitive Street Fighter, unfortunately. There's something about it. It's just like there's like a certain randomness involved, as well as it's player versus player, which is interesting, as well as Cyberpunk. They released a new update and an anime, and I got back into it. So one of the things I was going to recommend this week, if you haven't seen it, the anime is really good. Definitely not safe for kids, but quite good. As like an actual anime, it's quite good, but also as like a message, it's quite good, especially for people who don't want to play the game. Like I think the anime may actually spell out some of the goals they had for the game in a lot more clear fashion than they did in the game.
Right.
Whereas in the game, I think you have to play it for maybe 300, 400 hours to understand why it was designed this way and like what they're trying to tell you. But a lot of it is about maybe some of the existentialism around being an augmented human or a cyborg and what those outcomes might be is kind of what it is. And we kind of are now. I mean, we've got, like, I'm wearing AirPods and I want an iPhone. We're getting to that point. We're the tip of the iceberg, and they kind of take it to the next level and let you know, like, hey, how would that change the way you think? Would you feel superhuman and what goes along with that kind of stuff? So
and of course, when we were on the same team, we both had and you still do have a colleague who goes a little bit further with that, with like a chip in her hand.
Absolutely, and like I feel like this is becoming more commonplace, where a lot more people are more interested in like having assistants or something that can just aid them in some way. I think Google Glass, didn't go as far as they expected. But at least we know that the capabilities are there. I was looking at HoloLens again earlier today from Microsoft in terms of what can be done there.
Another vendor that has glasses that it's better for Android than iOS, and it's like a letter and a word. I can't remember a letter and a word. That's pretty useless.
Interesting.
But Yeah,
I think Ray-Ban's got like some smart stories or ones that I've heard of before. And then there's Bose has the ones that has speakers in them, I think is all they actually do.
yeah,
They're headphone glasses,
yeah,
which is pretty interesting. But we're getting to the point where like I've seen the Aura fitness ring as well, which kind of
yeah.
looks like, I mean, I've got a ring, but it's about this size.
Mm.
Uh, I guess it can tap you with haptics and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But we've talked about this before, but I am very interested in the space.
Yeah, things that actually get embedded. I don't know if I like, because I've been around long enough to see all sorts of things that were like, okay, this is
Right.
this is going to be the best there is, and then
Right.
it disappears after a few months or years.
Right.
Um,
Are you still a little bit jaded about like Betamax or Laserdisc? Is that what we're talking about?
is what I was definitely thinking of. Although I never had it, I always had VHS. But I mean, even CDs. I mean, CDs had a long run, but I haven't bought a CD, and I don't have a CD player. I don't own one.
Yeah, my wife and I were talking about that the other day. Like, I feel like CDs are the only physical medium that you can readily go out and get aside from LPs.
Right.
But aside from vinyl, CD is kind of the de facto right now, and a lot of people
Yeah.
just don't have a CD-ROM drive
Yeah.
or CD player in the car.
I do have like a jazz drive and what was the other one, that another one of the iOmega
Zip drive?
zip drive.
Yeah.
I actually found those pretty recently, but I don't own a CD burner or CD reader.
Yeah, format's interesting. So let's say you had an RFID reader implanted in your
Yeah.
fingertip, and then RFID2 came around. What would you do?
Yeah.
How would you reprogram it? What if there's no more programming? We're talking about zip drives. Like a lot of, at least my university stuff was all on zip drives because it was the one format that I knew I could move from Mac, Linux, and Windows. Depending on the lab availability, I could take my work there. But even that, I think it was FAT16, like not even FAT32 format that I had to use just to make it so that each could read it, and some couldn't write but could read. So I'd have to email myself and then take the zip drive elsewhere and write to it, kind of thing. It was awful.
Yeah. And thinking of RFID, I mean, there's other tool. I mean, I think we talked before about that really interesting tool called like Flipper, I think it's called.
I believe we did, yeah.
A little device that you could read your. In fact, I've seen a few videos recently where they will take a kind of a bulkier card key that somebody had for their apartment, read it with the Flipper.
Oh, the HID, yeah.
And then burn that to a smaller disk, and so they could have multiple keys in this one disk, which was. I love the idea. Of course, you can't.
There's a little startup up the street, yeah, that will like copy fobs for you. And I've always wondered, like, do I trust this company? Because the fob is essentially like a long text string, as far as I can tell. And then the copying is just, are they storing them? Can they rewrite them? Do they know where I live? They got my billing info. I have a lot of questions.
Yeah, perfect criminal organizations. Like, we got this.
Listen, I'm sure it's safe. So I have questions.
Yeah. I mean, even like garage door openers. What I know there was a problem for a long time in Europe with the credit card machines. Like a portable terminal that the waiter or waitress brings out to the table, and you would just have your. I used plenty of them when I was in Victoria and in Hornby, Ireland, over the weekend or over the last couple of weeks. But in Europe, for a long time, the numbers that were submitted, from the base to the from the terminal to the base station was all done in plain text. There was no encryption. It was just open plain text over the wire, not over the wire, over the air. And as long as you knew how to listen, you could see these credit card numbers going straight in plain text, which is, I assume that's been solved. But a few years ago, when I was still living in Europe, that was don't use those things.
I like that you brought that. So recently, my wife and I both had some interesting things on our card. I think one of them was like a small charge, like a 50-cent charge. Someone had activated their Google Play Store. I don't know if I've talked about this on Skype before, have I? Okay. No. And hers was a refund, but they both look pretty sketchy. And we don't listen. We're in Canada, as you probably noticed, people just tap and they go about their merry little lives and they don't think twice, kind of thing. But we pretty much only tap, be it Apple Pay or what have you. But honestly, it's generally how we pay for most things. And the the fees are very small, so it felt a little bit weird. But we called them and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is not normal. Go ahead, get a new card."
Right.
What I did notice though is with Apple Pay, at least when you tap, that's a different credit card number that goes through.
Mm.
And again, having worked for Samsung Pay in the past, I know that that's the same way it worked, and I'm pretty
Right.
sure Android Pay was the same because when we
Yeah.
talk to the banks, they use similar APIs for different companies. That,
Right.
you know, one person comes in like, "Oh yeah, we've done this before. We'll just use the same method," kind of thing. But since it's a credit card vending machine, essentially on the API side, what you're tapping is a virtual credit card. So for them to get rid of the virtual credit card is very easy. A physical credit card is a little bit different in that, like, it is sort of like the seed for all these virtual credit cards. So there are like
Mm.
knock-on effects to changing your card, and it took a little bit, like a couple weeks, to actually get through everything
Right.
and properly cancel it right away, which is great. And then it's like, okay, so how do I pay for things? I'm used to walking around and tapping on stuff, and it's kind of like a silly problem to have, but like honestly, so
Yeah.
we decided that maybe not paying for things is good for a bit. Let's save some money for a little bit. So we did that. And then
Right.
I had a second bank account, so we used that as well. And then just like our debit card sort of thing. So you can like
Yeah.
chip and pin, I guess is what you call in the US. But it's an interesting spot to be in when you're thinking about what that physical security of the device is to the base station, because that's like way out of what I was
Yeah.
thinking in terms of attack vector, right? I was thinking to
Yeah.
get skimmed at a gas station or something like that, like the
Yeah.
standard stuff. Like where do I pay where it's not tapped?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
I tap for everything, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that's where we're at now, at least in Canada, is trying to think of like where could the thing have been, and I do worry about that when I go to the States because a lot of the times I'm like swiping or whatever,
Right.
and it's hard to tell on ATMs, especially if something's been added on the front.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm getting to the conclusion here is that I feel like the Apple Pay virtual credit card. I know there's some startups that do that as well. Is like the secure way of doing things, and that may be where I'm pushed towards, mostly from a security standpoint than anything else. Is to like use that virtual credit card instead of use the real one, because getting rid of the real one was actually a chore.
Yeah.
And it involved like a whole bunch of like all of your cloud accounts, your
Right.
Gmail, your Office 365, you pay for it, all of these things like your Xbox, your PlayStation, your Nintendo, like it's all this one card. Amazon, like there's so many
Yeah.
places I had it, and I
Yeah.
just didn't realize like, oh yeah, I do have a lot of like recurring fees. PayPal is kind of interesting in that
Yeah.
like it'll just round robin pick where it's going to charge next. So it started coming out of a bank account that I didn't really use,
Right.
and I was worried about NSF and stuff like that. But yeah, it becomes like your whole life is sort of wrapped up in this, and it wouldn't be that bad if it weren't for, like you mentioned earlier, points. And I think that's how they get you. They want you to use your
Yeah.
credit card because you get more
Yeah.
points.
Yeah.
That is
I
my
mean,
rant about credit cards.
I mean, the points part at the end, that there is like magical. It's
They gotcha. Yeah,
there's
they've gotcha.
free money that you can. I mean, we used it to stay at the Empress for 6 nights, and
It's not a cheap stay.
no, it's not. Especially when we actually got there and we had that initial 6 nights, 5 nights, I think. Maybe it was only 4 nights, 4 or
5
5.
nights, 6 days. Yeah.
And we had a room with 2 king size beds on with a harbor view.
Yeah.
But when we checked in, I said, "Well, do you have like a suite so that was like a bedroom and a living room with a door between them? Because we have a 3-year-old. It would be great to be able to put her into the bedroom, and we still have the living room to watch TV or do other things." And they upgraded us to that, but we lost the harbor view. But having that space, like, oh my god, it was so good being able to close her off. And actually, my wife was a bit sick, so I ended up staying with Stella, and my wife would come out into the living room and
that is good to have that separation though.
Yeah.
Even the 2 beds, like it seems silly, but if one of you is up a little bit later, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is interesting about the hotel room, because I do think about that a lot. Like, is it a place that you're going to spend a lot of your time? Like, is the view that important?
Yeah.
And I mean, it is nice to have a view, but also like maybe have coffee on the patio or something like that. I get it. Listen, a view is really nice to have, but in terms of like the actual functionality of the room, if you can get 2 washrooms, for example, like
Right.
drop the view, give me 2 washrooms, I'm good to go, kind of thing.
Yeah, so this one that we had, I mean, with the living room and bedroom, living room had a bathroom and bedroom had a bathroom. So it was like perfect. It was that's amazing. And in fact, we just booked our a trip that we're going to do in February. We're going to Disney World, and
Nice.
we got one of the 2-bedroom villas at Fort Wilderness, Copper Creek, I think it's called. And there, it's 2 separate bedrooms plus a living area in between. One of the bedrooms has a king size bed, and the other bedroom has 2 queens. And then the living area has or the main living room area has a pull-out couch. So
this poor child, whales and Mickey Mouse. What a year!
And so we're bringing both mothers, so my mother as well as Tony's mother.
Right on.
And so they there's space for each of the mothers has kind of a separate area with one of them getting Stella as well. And then we have our bedroom. So it's like the amazing if you can do it.
Right.
It's very expensive, but if you can do it, God, it's amazing.
And correct me if I'm wrong. Are you from the Florida area?
Yeah, I grew up in Miami. Yeah.
Okay. Have you been to Disney World before? Because I honestly don't get the allure. So if you've got a moment.
Yeah, I mean Disney World if you live in Florida, Disney World is a cheap vacation.
Really?
Cheap way, because your ticket, you get a 1-year pass for, I don't know what the rate is now, but when we were living there, it was maybe $100 and you have access for a year. That was 30 years ago. It's more expensive now, but it might be $300, $400, $500, I don't know, $600. It's kind of like the equivalent of maybe, I don't know, 6 entries, 6 days, and you pay for a year pass. And as long as you aren't like some people will stay off resort, but you can get the cabins at Fort Wilderness, which is kind of the campground area. And the cabins are basically single wide mobile homes.
And that's pretty big for a cabin.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big space with a bedroom and a pull-out couch in the main living area. And then I don't know, they're like $200, $300 a night, $400 a night. I mean, it's expensive, but you're in the resort. You have access to cool things. I mean, just being on the Disney property. And there's just so much to do. I mean, there's the parks.
Really?
Even if you don't care about the parks, there's so much to do on the Disney property that, I mean, no, I haven't been there since probably the last time I was there was maybe grad night, which was when I was graduating from high school. All the high schools in like Florida do this grad night thing where you go up to Disney World. The park closes at say 7, 8 o'clock at night, and then they let these high school graduating class take over the park for like 4 hours till like midnight.
That sounds dangerous.
Oh, it's amazing.
I'm assuming it's dry, right? Like there's no drinks involved or anything like that. It's 21. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not as dangerous as it might be.
But yeah, but that's the last time I went, and then actually, I mentioned to my wife that I really would like at some point to go back to Disney World. And when we first met, before we were married, I mentioned this several times, and she made it very clear that there would be no trips going to Disney World ever, because she is
I may have a lot in common here. Yeah.
She went once when she was like 11 years old. It was like a monsoon, and it was just a miserable experience, and she doesn't ever want to go again. Okay, so if I'm going to go, I need to go on my own, or I need to come up with something someday in the future. And then fast forward, I don't know, like a year or two, and she's with her sister, and she calls me and says, I'm going to take a trip with my sister. Like, great. That sounds great. No problem. I said, well, I'm a little afraid of telling you. Well, what? I mean,
where could you possibly be going? Yeah.
No, I mean, there's no problem. I mean, I'm sure you and your sister are gonna have fun. It's great. Just like they'd done a trip to San Francisco before that, and so yeah. I mean, then I said, it's not like you're going to Disney World. And then yeah. She said, "Well, we're going to Disney World," and it's an all behind the scenes tour.
So you're saying this could happen to me too? Oh, behind the scenes,
Yeah.
nice.
And so that was very annoying. And so this is kind of fixing
Sometimes that happens in a relationship. You know, that one may suggest something, and the other may say, you know, I don't think I'd ever want to do that, and then somehow, you know,
They
other
went
things,
and they had a great
other
time.
things conspire.
And
Yeah,
now,
that's awesome.
now we can go. And
Tamara says hi. Hi,
Tamara
Tamara.
says hi. Yeah, hi.
Yeah. That is hilarious. And I've also heard that Epcot is a bit of a snore fest. Is that still true? Because like that's the thing that interests me about.
It's always been amazing.
Okay,
I
yeah,
don't know
that's what
why
I thought.
people don't like Epcot. I think
Yeah.
Epcot's awesome.
It's like retro future kind of. So that's the thing that really interests me.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I mean, it's not. I think Epcot's amazing. I mean, I always used to. I mean, I guess one of the last times I went, I mean, it was still when the Michael Jackson EO ride was there, which was, you know, this is like
ago, yeah.
1990 or 1988. But I mean, I loved Epcot. I've never been to Animal Kingdom. That's a new park for me that didn't exist last time I was there, or the movie studio one where the Galaxy's Edge or Galaxy's Edge, the Star Wars area. So I'm looking forward to that.
I'm so bad. I'm actually not sure what it is. I apologize. Yeah. I think it might be Galaxy's Edge. I know some people at Datadog are very much interested in this.
And then I think there's like a Guardians of the Galaxy ride. Animal Kingdom was built as recently as 1998, so that's why I haven't been there.
That feels like yesterday. Yeah.
I think the last time I went was probably in 95, 96, 97, somewhere on there. My friends who I grew up with, they all had kids, and we went as a group. And it was my first real experience spending any time with like 3 and 4 year olds. Because,
at Disney World, this is a good introduction.
And at Disney World, so I was like, "Oh God, this is going to be great. We're going to go on all the rides. I mean, maybe not Space Mountain, but you know, we'll see a bunch of things, and even the smaller rides. You know, like It's a Small World. I mean, it's kind of goofy, but it's still amazing. And so we're going to do all those, and so we go on It's a Small World. We wait in line. We go through the line and get on the thing. To get into the park, I paid, upwards of $100 to get in here. And it was a time when $100 was expensive.
Yeah, it was a lot of money.
And then we get off It's a Small World, and it's time for their nap. Like, wait, we're leaving? We just got here. What do you mean we're leaving? I just paid $100. Well, no. So I feel like the same thing's going to happen here, but at least we're staying in the park. So
so you can go back in. Now,
so grandmother will be together, and we can go back in.
So you're saying you're not like what's the term? A Disney adult, I guess. You're going along because you're interested, but you're not so much into the like Mickey, Minnie Mouse, Donald Duck, Goofy. That kind of
I don't.
No. Okay. So I feel like maybe in that same spot. The rides do look interesting to me, but like the wait times are what worry me.
Yeah, the wait times are definitely concerning. It seems like there's this Genie Plus thing where you can book, like have reserved times so you can get onto rides, but you can only do that every 2 hours. But you have to, and
that's not too bad.
Yes, and there's some rides that depending on the ride, it'll be 10-minute wait or 5-minute wait or longer, and those longer lines. That's the ones you want to do this Genie Plus thing, or even some individual lightning rides or something like that, where you can pay like $10 per person and jump to the front of the line, or $15 and so.
Yes. Thank you. I was trying to think of the term, but Timer got it. Yes. So that express pass. I was assuming like at some point everyone will buy the pass, and then it's not express. So you need like the Super Express or the Ultra Express, or this Super Street Fighter, like Super Ultra Express pass.
So that's where that individual, you pay per ride to jump to the front. Going back to how it was when the first several years of going to Disney World for us was you had the ticket booklet, and you had a bunch of A tickets, a bunch of B tickets, a bunch of C, D, and E tickets, and maybe it was like 5 E tickets in the booklet, and Space Mountain cost you 3 of those E tickets. It was an E ticket ride, and I still have.
I can't help but think of the back end. Like, this is the worst queuing system you could possibly implement. Where like some queues are more equal than others. Like, this sounds like a nightmare, both in person. But like, imagine, because I'm assuming this is all computerized. Like, imagine trying to write whatever back end this is, where like things are weighted.
Yeah, but it's even worse. One of the worst things. I mean, so Disney is a amazing company. I know they're
it's a whole thing.
It's an amazing company.
It's a company.
And they have an amazing technology group. I mean, their IT group does so many cool things. Every time I get a glimpse into stuff that Disney does, it's like, oh my god, this is awesome. It's like even the IT group at Comcast, the company that everybody hates. They do so many cool things inside that how does this stuff not get out? And how are these cool people not the ones that talk to customers? Anyway, so Disney does really neat things, but you try to get a hotel, and there are 15 hotels on the property, 15, maybe 20, I don't know. Before, when we used to go, it was just Contemporary, Polynesian, and a couple others. I think the Swan had just opened. But so now there's a whole bunch of hotels, and they have lots of different room types. So from like small 1-bedroom or small one room things up to 4-bedroom large villas. You say you want to you have a group of 5 people going, and so now if you have to pick a window when you want to go, and it says nope, nothing available. Not okay. That week is not available, but if you move,
would you like to try?
3 days in advance, that's available. No.
Try again.
You've picked the start date and end date and number of people. No. Pick another start date. Start date. Okay. No. Yes, that's available. And so it's all. I mean, these guys they have they can. And I sometimes as I actually looked around for are there solutions to this? And it was a forum where somebody asked, and somebody responded who obviously doesn't know technology, saying, "Oh well, this is too hard a problem." No, it's not too hard a problem. This is technology. I mean, this is an relatively easy problem to solve. Even if you have 15 resorts and oodles of different. I mean, you can have you won't have this. I mean, look at. Whether it was, I remember when Skyscanner came out in Europe, and also Kayak. Show me the best. Here's the dates I want to leave and when I want to return, and plus or minus 3 days on the beginning, and plus or minus 3 days on the end. But I don't want to leave before 8 a.m. and I don't want to leave after 9 p.m. and all these variables, and it figures out based on how 10 millions of flights. It figures out how to do this. How is Disney not able to show this? Help me spend more money with you by giving me a better interface for finding a hotel.
It's sometimes I like to talk about incentives a lot, but sometimes it's a question of incentives. Maybe they're not incentivized to do it. So like this Express Pass, I assume you pay more for the Express Pass. So it's almost like you need the Express Hotel experience where you pay $5 extra and you can get a little bit of leeway when you're booking. But I always think back about like the naive kind of solution to this, because listen, I'm not a travel expert, but I do understand that there are travel experts that I can pay that will like find me a hotel. And I think the naive thing is like you just check every API until you're done, and then then plus minus one day and check it again very slowly. It sounds like an interview question that I just squeaked past kind of thing. But like there is like if you want to find something in the phone book, you can go page by page. This will, and they're like, nah, that's too slow.
Yeah.
We'll just do nothing that's faster.
Right. And,
so
and
it almost seems like it seems like a purposefully that they've done this.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I mean, there are travel agents that focus on Disney because it's such a hard thing to do. And you think, oh, okay, well, they probably have like an inn, and so it turns out, no, they don't have an inn. They have the exact same interface. They just are more persistent. And so it would be great if we could get one of we tried to get. I mean, the ideal would have been the overwater bungalows that are at the Polynesian resort, which there's only, I don't know, 10 or 15 of them. And, just, we want that.
Oh, like the Bora Bora kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Get us that room whenever. February's nice, but October's good too. Tamer's already leaving. He's only been here for...
I think he had a pretty good stay, and he also had a really good point. So the negative incentive might be that they don't want you to book on your own, that they do want you. Sorry to give him credit while he's leaving, but like honestly, that could be it. That they prefer that you talk to their travel rep and then they upsell you or what have you. Maybe that's it.
Yeah.
So we don't have Bora Bora this week, but you can stay in a Star Wars spaceship for 1,000 extra.
Okay, so there is the Star Wars spaceship.
Right. That's the thing you were talking about, right? Like Galaxy Express.
No, Galaxy's. Whatever Galaxy's, whatever. There's that theme park area where it's like everything looks like you're walking through Star Wars, but then there's the hotel stay, which is different, and that is it's a 2-day experience, and you show up. You can apparently people dress up and show up as their like favorite Star Wars character.
Oh, like a LARPing kind of thing.
Yeah,
like a real life role playing.
Yeah, and you check in at the terminal, which happens to be at Disney World, and
the Mos Eisley terminal,
and you get onto your spaceship, and the whole event. I mean, like you see the stars going by even in your room, and and you're flying to different places, and it seems like a really neat thing. It is $5,000 per person for like 2 days.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it does sound awesome. I think I need to work at a few more startups that go public.
Yeah, or like really rack up the points on the credit card.
Yeah.
Like I've also heard that there's like marketplaces for points as well, where people will buy points at a discounted rate so they can redeem them for something like this
Move things
Star
around.
Wars experience. Yeah. Which kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I gotta say, you kind of convinced me a little bit in terms of like that not being a fan of like the Disney characters. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's like it's just something that doesn't interest me anymore. But like being able to do the rest of the experience, and I think having a kid probably sways a little bit, right? Like when you're bringing someone with you who's going to be like you get to see their eyes light up.
Though I'm not sure a 4-year-old is the best. 3 by the time we go, she'll be 4. I'm not sure she's like the best age for it because she will be tired and will want to go back to sleep. But and so maybe that 9-10-year-old being with you for that could be a better age, but of course, then they start to hate you. So I don't know.
I think that's a bit early. I mean,
Okay. But I mean, I think even as adult, I mean, I think I seem to remember my sister. That's where they went for their honeymoon. Because there is so much. I mean, like, okay, let's just say that you don't want to. You like, if you are a gardener, there is like a gardening behind the scenes at Epcot and Magic Kingdom, and where they show you. Cool. I mean, I'm not a big gardening person, but I would like to do that. Or
things at scale, right? Like gardening at scale. What does that look like? It's gonna be a whole thing.
How do you cook for at a restaurant for all these people, and how do you scale those kitchens to that scale? And
that is interesting
for that. And
I want the tech ride. Like walk me through your Kafka and like.
Yeah.
What database do the rides run on?
DevOps behind the scenes at Disney. I'm great for that.
What does a push to prod look like for some of these rides? That would be amazing to me.
Yeah. how do you do an update for Space Mountain to handle,
I'm so sad to say, but like at least in terms of Vancouver, what we get for like the job recs and stuff like that, a lot of it is like Atlassian contractor stuff that I've seen from Disney. It's like, hey, would you like to become our Confluence on-prem admin kind of thing?
Right.
Not as interesting as like, yeah, tell me about all of the sensors that monitor like pH and water level in the soil. That sounds amazing to me.
Yeah. I mean, there's I mean, I don't know what is, but I remember at Epcot before there was one of the big pavilions was, I think, called the Land or something like that, and it was a lot of farming, and well, like, and they're probably using really interesting sensors in all these places. And I mean, how do you use all this? I mean, like, go into the detail of what is the actual equipment they're using. I mean, that'd be amazing.
Do they have like a Disney Plus ride? Like, also interesting to me. Like, how do you? It's like, again, another like one of those interview questions, right? If you were to make Netflix, what would you do? Like, I'm super interested to hear what's going on behind the scenes at Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Like, maybe we need to. I feel like we could get them to speak at a conference or something like that. But I would really like to know, like, what happens when you release a season of The Mandalorian? Like, what do you do for that game day?
Right.
I want to go on that ride.
Yeah.
Disney, I think, is such a large company now. Like, they own so many properties that I wonder if they've got, like, when we're talking about hotel reservations, that kind of stuff, it feels like at that scale, you might want to have like a standard library. Not to make all this about tech, but like, honestly, there's some element of scale. Like, when you're owning all these companies, you must have like a playbook or a run book to bring a new property online. Like, I know. So what interests me about Disney is like Tokyo Disney has a Super Mario kind of thing. And again, I'm still not a super big Super Mario fan, but I'd be interested in seeing like whatever the Super Mario themed Disney thing is.
I mean, thinking of like library or design library or design dictionary. I like what I did. Datadog just put out a blog post just in the last week or so about DRUIDs.
Oh, it launched. Sorry, I should know this. I knew it was in draft. I actually didn't know that it came back. That is fantastic because like, you nailed it. So like, I think there's other companies like Telerik or something might sell you like .NET components that you can pick and choose, but like at a certain scale, they're definitely still around. So I think Progress bought them, and what's interesting is that Telerik and Chef are now part of the same company, which is like kind of so like what was old is new again kind of thing. So people are talking about like DevOps libraries, so and stuff like that. But making a form is one of those things that every company will go through, and then like a date picker, which when we're talking about the hotel, things like booking systems, and then like a queue, like jumping ahead of the queue, that kind of stuff. And then we're talking about design library. Like, how do you make all of this look similar or maybe match? So like all the Star Wars stuff needs to be Star Wars themed. All the Disney stuff needs to be Disney themed, or the Super Mario stuff. I'm sure there's like a visual design guide, that kind of stuff. Super interesting to me at scale.
Yeah, it was interesting. That was one thing that was. I remember when DRUIDs or that thing came out somebody, I forget who it was that built it up originally, like in 2018 or so. But before that, it was definitely rougher. When I started Datadog, it was 2013 or 2014, and it was a lot more hand done. It's like, well, you figure out what's the right way to put that box there.
I think that's normal though, and like. So one of the things we dealt with at Samsung was like internationalization and fonts and like mobile apps, and like all of the apps from the company should like that ship with the phone should look this way, and then maybe the ones that you overlay on top of them have a different little, like a wrinkle or a different little sort of feel to them, but generally they'll all use the same sort of font, the same sort of style guide. So when you're dealing with all these apps, because phones are made up of tons of apps, they feel like the same cohesive experience. I know material design was a big one. Apple Human Interface Design Guidelines way back in the day was one of those for like System 7, System 8, that kind of stuff. Even like Windows 95, it seems silly, but that was a revolution in look and feel compared to 3.1 or NT back in the day. But I really do find those things like that language or the way you interact with the computer and like what that looks like from one company, super cool. And I'm looking at this article now about DRUIDs. I'm super happy it's landed.
So I think before we every week is the same. It's like, oh my God, what are we going to talk about? And we think
let's talk about travel.
let's talk about this random thing. And then half hour goes into it, and then we think, oh yeah, what was that thing we were going to talk about?
Two old dudes talk about at Disney.
But you pointed out a GitLab survey. Did your
I did finally get the download. I think I shared it with you on Slack there. I'm not sure if you've got yours, but yeah, I'd love to talk about this. Did you get yours? I should have dropped it in the Slack for you. I think. Yeah, in our back room. Yeah, no worries. The email did take a while, so if anyone is listening to this want to follow along, you can sign up. It took about 10 minutes for me to get the email, but otherwise it's a free report, and it's specifically about the state of we'll call it DevSecOps. That's what they're calling it. I think that's kind of become a common term now, which is good.
Yep.
But essentially, as you're automating things and integrating things, when you're thinking about security, as part of that, we're talking about DevSecOps, sorry. And what they've released is, I believe it's their 6th report about DevSecOps. So they've been doing this for a bit. They're trying to make it happen. And I think it's stuck as a term. But what I found interesting is that, well, one, so the company putting out this report authoritatively is, to me at least, like a repository CI/CD company. And in terms of like how that has to do with DevSecOps, is you shifted it all the way left to like, as you're developing your code and pushing it through to prod, you've thought about it prior to even going to dev, even going to stage 1, and going to prod. Like it's part of that process, which is sweet. And they get a lot of respondents. They get some pretty good conclusions, which can get off the site just by looking there.
Yep.
But like, if you wanted to, going through some of the key findings would be good. I can talk about mine because some of them were summarized on the site already, so it's pretty easy. But like we'll get it out of the way. Like the primary respondents to the survey, 45% are like the computer hardware services, software industry, software as a service. So like the tech. What I found really, really interesting is, so that's 45%, but the next like 10, 5, and 5%, we're talking about automotive, industrial manufacturing, retail, and then business services consulting, sure, and energy utility. So we're talking about like big industry, basically, is now into not only CI/CD pipelines, but also the security of which. And it could be that they were late to get into CI/CD, but once it got there, they're landing with thinking about security in mind. Like that's a massive plus for me.
Yeah.
To not have to say like, oh, you're already in prod, now we got to go all the way back and think about security kind of thing. Being able to at least have someone taking a pulse check before they do things is massive, and understanding that it's important. I'd say that like that's a huge cultural win, that this isn't like 90% or something. All IT companies, that's massive for me.
Yeah. Of course, this is a survey. It's something that individuals at these companies have actually gone through the material and like, yes, I am 1 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 for each of the questions. And so it's, with any kind of survey, you need to think about, well, are these the answers that are what they really think, or what they wish they did?
Right, and some of that's in here. So in terms of like maturity level is also covered. The other thing that I noticed is that it skews a little bit. So the bell curve is a lot around the 25 to 50, 50 to 100, 100 and 250, 250 to 400, 500 to 1,000. So like medium, small businesses. We're not talking enterprise. Whereas previously, the people who were like more risk averse would be the enterprise clients. So again, I'm really happy to see that like smaller companies, and maybe smaller companies are the companies that use GitLab, but at least in my humble opinion, like GitLab's a pretty good platform. There's a lot that you get under GitLab, even if it's just open source. There's a lot there for you. So I like the fact that this is represented in this report, but if you're from larger industry, maybe it would have a different skew for you. But I do feel like, so we're talking about multiple industries, thinking about CI/CD and security, as well as small, medium business. Like this, you and I have both been in the industry for a while, but like security has always been an afterthought.
Right.
So I thought those were like pretty good takeaways, just to see who like one was interested in the survey, who responded to it, that kind of stuff.
Right.
What about you? What'd you get out of this? Are you still scrolling through it?
I'm still scrolling through. I mean, I think about, what is the difference between this kind of report versus, all the reports that Datadog would put out, where this is a report talking about the industry that GitLab is in. This is kind of their space, and they've created the survey based on users of GitLab. What do they think about the space that they're in? Whereas the Datadog reports are based on not really about monitoring, but it's about the stuff that gets monitored. And it's not a survey, but rather looking at how Datadog's customers use it based on anonymized data.
You got it. Yeah. So some of it's kind of like two sides of a coin. So some of it is like the what I think I want to do, like you're saying, the projection, as well as maybe the other side of the coin is like what I'm actually doing. And a lot of times you have to take a few of these surveys together and kind of look at them.
But even then, that is not fully accurate, because that is also just the Datadog customers who are doing it, rather than all. And Datadog doesn't have all the customers; they have a small slice of. So
that's right. Yeah. So a lot of the times it's more about understanding the significant portion of respondents compared to the total addressable market. The problem, I think that like this is an age-old problem, but like how many developers are there in the world is like one of those really difficult questions to answer. But is it 100 million? Is it 10 million? Is it less? Like it's probably somewhere around there, but like, we don't know. Like how many we know how many people roughly there are in the world. We know how many people of those may be developers based on what we see. But there are hobbyist devs and things like that might not be on the internet. It's really difficult to see. Or people who have internet, like maybe they're on Hornby Island, and they're checking in once a week.
Yeah, I mean, having lived in the Netherlands, I know that there are a whole lot of IT types of. I mean, all the expats that I ended up hanging out with on, for different events, they mostly were IT across all sorts of companies, a lot of logistics companies, but also a lot of banks, a lot of travel, a lot of all sorts of things, but tended to be technology people. And all of the Netherlands, they had 40 respondents. And yet Pakistan, which is, I'm sure, I don't know what the IT or DevOps, what the options are there, but they got more respondents to the survey from Pakistan, or from about equal with New Zealand. Now, I've been to New Zealand, and there's more sheep than people in New Zealand, and so is it a? I love New Zealand, but and then Canada only had 137 respondents, and 75 of all respondents were from the U.S. So definitely U.S. focused or U.S. heavy. So it's interesting that it did get opinions from around the world, but it's mostly an American study.
Yeah, and furthermore, when you're looking at people who are who would use GitLab, like there are different markets, at least in my mind, for GitLab and GitLab Enterprise. But like Canada had 136 and the Philippines had 110, for example. So in terms of respondents, like it's the GitLab market might be different than the market as a whole. There's a bit of a skew there. The main things that I'm seeing though is like a lot of shift left. So people are shifting left, which is kind of DevSecOps. So shifting left and automating more. Some of those are market trends. Some of those are as your company matures. Some of those are personal maturity things.
Right.
But what they're saying is that it went up 10% over last year. And again, does that mean that like GitLab is selling to 10% more people, or does it mean that the market's up? It's kind of a little bit of both, probably.
Yep.
But the majority, like the job title of people who responded, were developers. So in some way, like looking through the job titles, they're mostly developers.
Yep. But I did find another thing that was interesting was 30% using Git for source control versus Team Foundation Server or CVS or something else. And GitLab is the tool of choice for CI builds. But Kubernetes is used by 33% of teams right now. So that's pretty interesting.
And some of that might be like deploying GitLab. It's a big deployment. Deploying GitLab onto Kubernetes, even if it's managed Kubernetes, might be easier these days than setting up multiple servers to get GitLab running. So one of the first forays into Kubernetes might be GitLab on Kubernetes, and then you can build up your experience there as a platform team. and then sort of share that experience across the rest of the team. And I'm saying this from experience because having deployed GitLab a few different ways, that's certainly how it grew, at least at Samsung. So we used it in-house for a few different things and then ended up going enterprise. But like it introduced us to what then was the state of the art of setting up a CI/CD pipeline. It was kind of awesome, and it sort of dragged the whole platform team into the future, which was awesome. We learned a lot of new skills just by monitoring it. It kind of sucks to be like a blocker to prod when your CI/CD platform is down that you're running and managing on your own, as opposed to something like a GitHub enterprise to a GitLab. Like there's definitely like a build versus buy there, but there's also costs associated. So I think the GitLab, like bootstrap, do it yourself, get it done. But also, if you want to pay for it, kind of thing, GitLab sort of covered a lot of those bases. So I feel like as their client base is maturing and they're maturing as a company, it's kind of making the numbers look pretty good, obviously. But yeah, I do wonder about the Kubernetes. Is it GitLab you're running on Kubernetes or cloud?
Yeah.
But there's more Kubernetes out there. I don't know what you're seeing. I see a lot of managed Kubernetes quite a bit. So we're talking about the GKE, the EKS, the AKS is what a lot of people that I talk to are running. And they've got, I used to think, hey, you're going to have one big cluster with a bunch of different namespaces. A lot of the people I'm talking to are like multiple clusters that they're running on. So they're not namespacing dev and prod and staging and stuff like that. They'll have a prod cluster, a staging cluster.
Yeah.
And again, that's just my pulse check. It's not this.
Right.
But yeah, I feel like there's a lot here. There's a bunch to it. The main thing is it looks like security has become something that is less of a last minute concern and maybe like a middle concern. And that as people are automating things, security has become part of the automation, which is good because I think automating without thinking about security is one of those traps that you can get stuck into.
Yeah, and much like monitoring in general. I mean, monitoring was always. I mean, I remember again early days for me at Datadog, monitoring was always definitely an afterthought, and I guess for a lot of people it still is, but it is a lot less so than it was.
Yeah. What's that sentence? My customers will tell me when the site is down.
Oh yeah. Was it layer 8 debugging or layer 8? The customer says it's down. Yeah.
Yeah, there's software and then there's sort of the meat space. So listen, I realized we ended up rambling quite a bit about Disney and then a lot about DevSecOps. I mentioned my takeaway, so it's definitely like on Netflix, the Cyberpunk anime. I highly recommend. Whether you play the game or not, I actually think it's pretty interesting in the same way that like Perfect Blue might be interesting or Ghost in the Shell. So I'd say that it's like in that vein, which is like that's high praise. I'm not sure if you watch a lot of anime, but like things that make you think. But things that make you think philosophically, I think are like where I go to for anime, or what I go to anime for. The other way. What about you? Yeah, any recommendations?
I pulled up my my Switch. I was trying to remember what is the game that I've been playing a lot recently, and
definitely memorable.
I don't spend too much time at the launch. I'm just in the game. With the Switch, you're just like
you just power it off, power back on
where you were, unless the game crashed, which this one has happened a few times. But it's called Immortal Fenix Rising.
Okay.
And it's been a lot of fun. I mean, I've been in it for I don't know what number of hours it is now, but 15, 16, 17 hours playing around with this thing. And it's a full world like Breath of the Wild, I think it's called. But I found that to be kind of boring for a while, and I gave up on it. But this has really kept me engaged, and it's been a lot of fun. So that's the big thing I've been playing. And I saw something that looked really cool. Another game that comes out either today or tomorrow that I might have to buy. God, I forgot what it's called.
I'm looking up this Immortals, and it looks like it was developed in Quebec. It looks quite popular.
Yeah.
It looks pretty good. And I will say about Breath of the Wild, like there's certainly there are downtimes in that game, like long spaces where there's no one around, that kind of thing. And I think they did it on purpose to make you feel like the world is big and things like that. But honestly, it's sometimes it can be a snore fest. I fell asleep playing the game, which is like always an indicator of like high fun value. when you're actually falling asleep playing it.
Yeah.
You're looking for this new game. Is it the new Mario versus Rabbits? I'm pretty excited.
No, there's like it's I can't remember what it's called. But I just saw an article describing it as something that came out a few years ago. Oh, near.
Nier Automata.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of games that will make you think, this one will
today or tomorrow. And that looks really cool.
Yeah, I definitely feel like you would like that, and it certainly makes you think. And there's a song in there that I think will probably get stuck in your head.
Oh yeah,
I've not played it. In fact, the Switch game may be what pushes me over the edge to play it, because I hadn't played it.
Yeah, and one other thing, say it's song. Another thing I heard recently, which I was kind of surprised at, was I saw there was a video, AI generated music video.
Okay.
For Dies Antwort, that kind of a weird, very strange, kind of hard to listen to sometimes. Yes. But they had this video. I suck at remembering the details, but there's this new video out that and it's actually quite interesting to watch and to vague.
Is it Age of Illusion? Does that sound about right? It was released. Okay.
I don't know how old the song is, but I just saw the video.
It's about 3 weeks old in terms of the video. Yeah. Very cool. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, I need to have you around so I can just say my vague description of a random thing, and you'll come up with the details.
I'm pretty good at Google. Yeah. All right, man. I got to run. Meeting time. We got a conference coming up, but listen, always good touching base with you. Look forward to seeing you.
So you got Dash, right? Coming up?
I do. So next week I think I'm okay. The week after, I think, is when I'll be at Dash. But next week's still on the books.
Sounds good. All right. See you next week.
See you later. Bye-bye. Bye.